What's the most disgusting thing you found about someone close to you but never confronted them? Story 1. When I was 23, I caught my then-girlfriend's dad fudge a horse. He did not see me, and I just walked away completely bewildered. I called the Humane Society and told them about it, but I never said anything to him directly. 3 more years of family dinners and holidays before me and his daughter split up. And every time I would be sitting there at the table listening to him talk about whatever, and all I could think in my head on repeat was horse fudge, horse fudge, horse fudge, horse fudge. Story 2. That the rumor about my assistant principal's father kidnapping and torturing women in a basement bunker was 100 real. I'm still shocked he didn't change his last name. ETA. The father's crimes may or may not have inspired an episode of a male body part wolf show. Story 3. I've stopped all contact with my family. This is partially the reason why. My sister died in an accident a few years ago. We went through her things and found out she was leaving her longtime boyfriend, whom she had a kid with, my niece. He was abusive, financially, emotionally, and physically. He was still in contact with substances, friends whom he was making meth for. One of his estranged daughters told us to get my niece out of there. We found out he had been cheating on my sister and had other kids, one of which was with a trucker adult worker. We know he was not paying for any care for his daughter, and my sister was in severe credit card debt because of that. We know my sister was in contact with a family attorney, searching for apartments, and working to get out. My mom and dad have opened their arms to him. My mom was going over to his house to clean and cook for him, took over all medical for my niece with batting an eye. That's fine, but they didn't want to ask him and rock the boat. And the absolute real kicker? All of the insurance payout money is put in his care as soon as she turns 18. Not an executor or third party. Everyone who was involved with the insurance money aspect told my parents not to do that. We are talking 3 lawyers, the life insurance guy, his lawyer, the financial planning guys, everyone. But he asked, and my mom folded. So at 18, my niece will get somewhere between $500K and $750K, and it will all go to abusive ex my sister was about to run from. Story 4. I was going to say that I had a GF and found out her ex was a narco trafficker who had gone to prison for eliminate 6 people. However, I did confront her about it. Her answer? He eliminated a lot more people than that. She absolutely could not have cared less because he was rich and gave her lots of money. That was the end of that relationship. Story 5. Back in uni, I gave away my old laptop to my best friend, roommate, because he needed it. A few months roll by, he no longer needs it, he forgets about it, lad was in a haze constantly, and it stays with me while on summer break. I turn that bad boy on, come to find out there's an insanely graphic Tier A zoophilic poster of a literal dog giving it full doggy style to a naked woman, blastered in full HD as the desktop background. I knew the guy had a adult content addiction. I just never figured it went that far. Couldn't stomach what I saw. Edit. As much as I hope it was a prank, I'm pretty certain that was no prank. I'd have been relieved, even if it weren't any funny. He was never expecting to give the laptop back. I literally gave it away. I thought he took it back home with him, but I think he used it very little and completely forgot about it and left it in the house we lived in. Answer, similar to a story I knew of someone at uni. This guy borrowed a friend's laptop for reasons unknown. We later found out it was because all his devices had been confiscated by the police for CSM. We learned this from his former housemate, who promptly kicked him out and got threats from the guy's dad, a big league lawyer from Hong Kong. Needless to say, he never faced any charges either. Story 6. A former employee on Intimacy Offender website when I was searching for a new apartment. He had access to kids in the position he was working. I didn't have to confront him, was able to fire him for not supplying identification. He had said it was in the mail when hired. Turns out he was a former piano teacher who had just gotten out of prison. Answer, I worked at a pizza place in college. Someone dropped a hint that one of our coworkers was on the Intimacy Offender Registry. So I searched and immediately found one of the delivery drivers who always gave off a strong creepy pedo vibe. Turns out he absolutely was on the list, but the person dropping the hint wasn't even talking about him. Turns out we had 3 intimacy offenders working there, 2 of which had crimes related to intimacy assaulting tipsy women. One had that and a charge for molesting an underage girl, and their job was to regularly do deliveries to the homes of tipsy college girls. The third was the store manager himself, who'd also been caught abusing underage girls. That answered why he might be hiring these people at least. Story 7. I used to babysit for a family where the father was caught statutory raping another 13-year-old babysitter. All of my friends also babysat for that family. All of our families knew about it. The entire community knew about it. Everyone blamed her. He wasn't even removed from the fire department. He wasn't the only intimacy offender in that fire department. Answer, is this in WA State? The tiny town I live in had a known female predator on the fire department. She lost her job as a teacher and had her teaching license permanently revoked for repeatedly climbing into bed with a female student, offering to buy students adult beverage, accidentally walking in on a female student, changing clothes after driving the student 2 counties over to go shopping, and lots of other weird, creepy stuff. Oh, and guess who married her after she did this? A Clallam County Sheriff's deputy who specializes in child forensic interviews for intimacy abuse cases. Her behavior was so bad, the mother of one of the victims had to get a protection order against her to stop her from texting the student during and after the State Depth of Education investigation. The police refused to investigate. And yet a Clallam County Sheriff's deputy was like, yes, this woman is wife material. Story 8. Was hanging out with my cousin. He was basically like a brother. We were probably around 15, just watching TV one afternoon. Then I realized I hadn't heard him for a few minutes. He was directly behind the love seat I was lying on, getting his whiner licked by our dog. Not sure why he thought this was a secure space. This is the first time I've shared that story. I didn't want to ruin his life. Answer, unfortunately, I think when we stay silent, we kind of show these people that it is a secure space to do what they're doing. It can be a complex situation, but as with everything, when we see something, we are supposed to say something. Animals and children are innocent, and I think anything involving them should be loudly voiced over anyone's reputation. Story 9. I woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and noticed my boyfriend, now ex, was still outside with his friend. They had been drinking all day, so they were pretty munted by this point. They didn't realize I was inside watching them. My ex was so tipsy his friend had to hold his male body part for him while he attempted to piss on the lawn. After seeing that, I was like, yeah, nah, I'm going to bed now, and never spoke to either of them about it, El Mayo. Answer, as long as he didn't shake it more than twice, it's not gay. But seriously, this isn't disgusting. Maybe shocking that they'd be so comfortable with each other, but also oddly sweet in a way. Guys struggle with being close to each other, and these two are closer than brothers. Assuming it wasn't intimacy, that is, it could also be that they were bi-gay and fooling around with each other. Story 10. Having done community theater, you'd be surprised, or not, also I live in Florida, how many mugshots and arrest records people on stage have. Never said anything about this stuff, though, because they were fine enough to work with, and nothing was ever as bad as SA. Strongest charge I did see was grand theft, though. Story 11. My mother, I call her my egg donor because she doesn't deserve the title of mother. The police know about the SA and physical abuse she was done for, but there are so many things people don't know. She eliminated my rabbit in front of me because I wouldn't eat my breakfast. She'd keep dead animals, dogs, etc., in the punishment shed that she locked me in. It was always animals. Once she knew it affected me, that was her go-to punishment if I refused to entertain her and her friends. Even now, I have an inane phobia of flies and maggots. Story 12. My mom either cheated on my dad or my stepdad with my dad's best friend, who also happens to be my ex-best friend's dad. Eat it. There's more, lol. It was my ex-best friend's mom who told me about it, i.e. the wife who got cheated on. Despite me and her daughter not being close anymore, I am with her mom. The woman's an angel who looked after me a lot as a child. Story 13. I did security for a venue overnight. There were 3 shifts, and the other 2 guards were men. We had all kinds of events in our building, but mostly child dance comps, and they would leave catalogs all over the place. I found some in our drawers that I was cleaning out and moved them to a rubbish box since they were old and we needed space for equipment. When I came back the next shift, they were put right back in the drawer, which prompted me to look through them. The catalogs were for children's cheer and gymnastics clothing, and there were pages dog-eared and marked where little girls were doing splits. I immediately threw them away in the dumpster outside where the rats were. The guy I suspected to have put them back wasn't happy, but he couldn't say why. Anyways, he later on OD'd after coming into a better position and amping up his vices, so the garbage took itself out. Story 14. Knew a guy that in our circle of friends as young teenagers. I'll never remember how it came up in conversation, but he mentioned that he knew how to make his pet cat come and later started trying to show me how it was done. I made an excuse to leave and didn't make a big deal about it. And mentioned it to a few other friends in the group, and it seemed everyone else was aware of this. I never hung out with him again. Story 15. My coworker, and best friend at the time, was using me to flirt with male coworkers. I found out when she called in sick one day and I had to use her PC to recover some files for a task. She had the Facebook pop-up messages enabled, which means you could see all of her incoming messages, even if you didn't have Facebook opened. I saw it happen in real time and I just froze. She was at home, messaging one of our coworkers telling him that she was about to shower and saying a bunch of flirty things. She had a serious boyfriend, so I was irked already. And then I saw my name. She was telling the guy about how sexy it would be if I hopped in the shower with her. He seemed really into it. They were feeding into this fantasy that involved me, and all I could do was read in horror as it was unfolding. I never said a word, just slowly distanced myself after that. I simply did not know how to deal with something like that, so I decided to shove it all the way to the back of my mind and try to forget about it. She turned out to be a creep in many other ways. We're definitely not friends anymore. Story 16. I used to crawl into my parents' bed some mornings when I woke up or had bad dreams. I don't remember this, but my mom told me she got a frantic call from my dad while she was working. I was maybe 6-7 hours, that he thought she had gotten back in bed with him while he was asleep. He turned around and grabbed me by the underwear. I always slept in an oversized shirt and underwear, and pulled me into his groin area. Nothing happened. I guess I had moved his arm, got out of his bed, and left the room. I was molested by a family member around that time and had gone to counseling, so I must have known this type of touch wasn't right. As mentioned, no memory of this ever happening, and I could imagine my dad doing something like this nowadays. Would never bring this up to him either. Story 17. A good friend's girlfriend left him after many years living together. He confessed to me that he had been emotionally abusive to her, not his words, manipulating her with the silent treatment, pressuring her to intimacy, paying for things and then holding it over her head. He knew he was being shoot the whole time. He knew she was right to leave him. Also, after being his lifeline during the breakup and subsequent depression, after he found another girlfriend, he effectively dropped me. I would almost like to think that he felt some shame over what he could confess, but I think the real reason is that he used me for emotional support, and now that he doesn't need that, is just a shoot friend. Story 18. My best friend's father was cheating on his mother. I found out from my mother because he asked to use our place for his philandering. My mother told me when I was a kid, I asked my best friend if he wanted to know a truth that could ruin his family. He said no, and so I never told him. I actually liked his father, the cheater. He was a nice, cool guy. Story 19. My grandmother was intimacy abused by her dad as a little girl. When my dad and aunt were little, she moved him in and had him share a room with them. They both ended up being intimacy abused, but the Jehovah's Witness church said it was a family matter, so he never got in trouble. Story 20. My dad was attracted to me. It started after my mom cheated on him and moved in with her new boyfriend. I asked my dad if I could borrow money for a taxi to leave a party and go to my boyfriend's house instead. I was not enjoying the party and felt uncomfortable. It was before you could pay by card for a taxi, and this middle of nowhere pub's cash machine was out of order. I was 18. He said, "Put my male body part in your mouth and I'll give you a tenner," thinking I couldn't hear him, but I did. And I'm pretty sure some of his friends did. Around this time, he would also accidentally walk into the bathroom a lot while I was in the shower, or he'd walk in on me changing by accident. I stopped going home during the holidays and haven't stayed at his house since. I never confronted him about it, chose to ignore it, and have never told anyone because it makes me feel ill and sad. He was always the safe parent when I was growing up, and now I don't spend time alone with him. Story 21. My friend broke up with her bum of 7 years somewhat toxic relationship. Anyway, she went through a Tinder phase where just sleeped around. Never really thought much of it and had tea with her one day, and we got to talk about people who cheat. She confessed that while she had the Tinder phase, she would go to a club bar with her BFF. And if two guys came up and one of them was in a relationship, her and her friend would do anything to get the guy to cheat. I saw her in a completely different light. She would sometimes have fallout with friends where they accused her of trying to get with their partners. I always defended her until she confessed that bit. Story 22. An ex-friend of the family covered up a relative's child adult content crimes. He was reported to police by another relative, and she told him to delete everything off his phone and computer. The ex-friend told my mother, who was horrified, and we cut contact. Hoped a lot of them rot in hell. Story 23. When my mom was battling cancer when she and my dad were first married, he left her to fight it alone. Well, her mom was there, but still, so he could complete an internship in another state. The cancer was so serious, they took final photos of the two of them. But hey, my dad prayed and God told him my mom would be fine. So off he went. Mom did end up beating the cancer, but I lost some respect for my dad the day I found out what he did. Story 24. I remember a friend of mine commenting about how current 13-year-old girls are really well developed and hot, which is fudge crazy. He talked about how another friend's cousin dressed so hot. I stumbled upon her a few times after that. She just looked like a kid. She wasn't even dressed up in a provocative way. She was just a child. I don't hang with that friend no more. We drifted apart. We were already drifting at that point. But darn, that shoot stuck with me. Edit. Actually, it surprises me this amount of times I've been with other dudes saying disgusting shoot like that unironically. Yeah, I don't really question much why some women say they'd choose a bear. Story 25. A cousin in my family being a rapist chomo, he is the kind of person by visual you wouldn't let around your kids anyway. But I told their immediate family who is alcoholic and won't give a shoot, and some in my immediate family in hopes of keeping my niece's nephews away. Story 26. I was molested by one of my friends in college. I didn't confront cause one. The friend group of men and women were very conservative, and I doubted they held sexist views. This guy was perceived to be unproblematic, religious, and polite. The group was created for our convenience since we belonged to the same ethnicity living in a different country. 2, he was conventionally attractive and then dating the most popular girl of our college. I knew me complaining would get me shamed and ridiculed, so I kept my distance and acted cordial in public settings. It was tough, but soon he got cancer, and I feel karma was served hot for him. I have cut contact with the whole group since. Story 27. We went to church about 20 years ago with this guy who got into a relationship with an underage girl at the same church. I think he was like 30 and she was about 15. Not sure if anything intimacy happened between them, but he did go to jail. My mom knew all the details. She made my sister write letters to him while he was in jail. BC, it's on us to forgive him and bring him to God's light. And she also blamed the underage girl for tempting him. My sister at the time was also 15 years old. I was about 9, but I just randomly remembered a couple weeks ago. Story 28. My friend had gone into the hospital and had been put under for a procedure. When she woke up, she found a condom inside her. Eventually, she pieced together that her boyfriend had violated her while she was still sedated. She left him quickly after, and he never denied it or anything. Everyone cut ties with him. My friend is doing good these days and living a good life. Story 29. When I was at uni, a few of us were good friends and used to go out partying a lot. One of them started bringing his best friend along to things, and he was good fun, but he would regularly get ridiculously tipsy and be falling over and vomiting and stuff. He used to always get very flirty and touchy as well, but I thought it was kind of a laugh because he was gay, I am a woman, and because I was young and inexperienced, and my tolerance for weird behavior was much higher. Then one night we were driving back to someone's house from a club, and he and I were in the back seat. He fully put his hand up my skirt, into my underwear, and into my genitals before I pushed him away. After that, I started to pay a lot more attention to the way he was acting in general, and I saw him over and over again doing things that violated women's boundaries. And I realized his best friend, my friend, was very aware of it. He would make jokes about how dumb his friend was and jokingly warn people about getting too close to him. I never confronted my friend about it directly, but I did let him know that I wasn't comfortable being around his friend. He brushed it off and vaguely made me feel like I was being the difficult one. I never told him the full extent of what his friend had done, but either way, I still think the way he tolerated him and made a joke of his actions was disgusting, and I never properly confronted him about it. Just let the friendship fizzle out. Story 30. Went to meet my mother's aunt, and she was living with a young man I thought was her son. Turns out he was her, for lack of a better word, intimacy slave. He was a teen. She was in her 40s. She was crazy as a loon. This was in the 70s. I was a teen and asked my mom about it, and she told me I shouldn't judge other people's life choices. Later, she said she should have been more concerned. Not sure whatever happened to them, but I always felt bad for that kid. I was about the same age. Story 31. A few weeks ago, my friend shaved in my shower while visiting me, and she didn't tell me. I went into my room, en suite, to shower before going to sleep, and I was confronted with crap smeared on my sink in a fully plugged shower drain, which overflowed. It was honestly a traumatic experience. I'm still processing the anger about cleaning another adult's feces for several hours so that I could go to sleep, and that she didn't even tell me. It was so disrespectful. I understand that she got sick, was probably very uncomfortable for her, and she was embarrassed. But to not offer to clean it or even give me a heads up is just really disrespectful. Story 32. I found an ex-boyfriend, Brian, from when I was a teenager, on the Florida Intimacy Offender Registry. At the age of 32, he had violated his wife's 13-year-old niece on at least 2 occasions. I would have confronted that useless waste of space, but alcoholism got to him before I could. Story 33. A girl I was friends with at university tried to substance me. I was at her place helping mount her TV. I finished and Claudio see her in the kitchen putting some powder into a cup, then walked over and offered me to a cup of water. I declined and she started acting odd, so I left. Story 34. I wouldn't say close to me, but I slept with a guy once that had a booger wall in his bathroom by the toilet. Found it after intimacy. Never brought it up and never saw him after that. I found him on a dating app recently, and he had a fiance and was looking for just friends. I wonder if she saw the booger wall or if he moved. Story 35. When I was about 14 years old, I was a new paperboy. There were 3 additional kids about my same age who did the same. One was a good friend that I actually hung out with quite a bit. We all delivered papers with our bikes to different parts of our neighborhood area. They were always together during prep, picking up the bulk newspapers and wrapping them to get them ready for bike delivery. Since I was new, I always did this solo. My 4th day, I asked if I can join them and we can help each other prep. My friend pulled me aside and told me sure, but on one condition. I had to let all 3 of them butt fudge me and cum in me. He mentioned that they were doing that to each other all the time. I passed on that and continued doing it solo. I also asked to have my bulk papers dropped off elsewhere and rarely saw any of them. I stopped hanging out with my friend and eventually all of us went our different ways from JR to high school. Story 36. Met someone at work, incredibly intense chemistry, slept together once. Found out later he was married with 5 kids under 10. Driving home one night, heard his name on radio news. He'd been arrested for historic pedophilia charges. He subsequently served 8 out 14 years in jail. It really fudged me up psychologically. I haven't dated since. When he got out, he tried to add me through social media. I threw up. Story 37. My best friend of a decade was actually just waiting until me broke up to make his move on her. The day after we split, he was over there. Not worth confronting. They can both piss off. I never spoke to or saw him again. That was over 8 years ago now. Story 38. My ex-roommate was physically and emotionally abusing his girlfriend when we lived together. I didn't know about it or witness anything suspicious at the time, but found out later through mutual acquaintances. Never confronted him as I had moved out about a year earlier, and we weren't in contact. We ended badly as he had also stolen money from me. Story 39. My brother, father's side, and my sister, mother's side, used to secretly hook up while we used to play when I was a kid. We'd play hide and seek, and they would take the opportunity to make out. I didn't realize what was going on then, but looking back, it was weird. They're not blood related. Story 40. My dad cheated on my mom with my current stepmom when he was deployed to Italy in the military. The only reason my mom found out was from a wedding invitation that was sent to her by mistake. My mom was devastated and became a raging alcoholic. I found out from my stepmom years later that my dad told her my mom and him were divorced when he got with her in Italy. He's a huge narcissist and played them both. Story 41. My brother-in-law intimacy abused his little sister for several years. She confided in me about it long after. She's in her 30s now and doesn't want anyone to know. I'd love to blow up his life over it, but doing so would blow up hers too. I dislike that guy so darn much. Story 42. I had a boyfriend at uni. It was very casual. Once a friend and I decided to go on his laptop when he was busy and change the wallpaper to something dumb. We ended up snooping, not really sure why, and found folder upon folder of suggestive semi-private pictures of what looked like Japanese Korean girls, really young. We both just logged off the computer, sickened but didn't say anything. It really disturbs me now to think about it. I should have said something to him, but we just split up after that and I never mentioned it. I do wonder if he's still out there somewhere, married with kids, even with the same hobby. It's awful to think about. Story 43. It was an ex. She'd grown up in a really neglectful and abusive situation. One of those, everything looks fine from the outside families. But there were a lot of things that nobody had ever taught her, including washing her hands after she used the toilet. Even in an, if you have food poisoning diarrhea, you need to properly wash your hands every time you use the bathroom situation. I'd suspected it, but said nothing until there was an incident a couple of months after we first moved in together, where she just didn't get over a stomach bug for several days. And I realized why when she walked into the bedroom, rested her hand on the wooden bedstead, and left 3 clear, wet fingerprints of shoot on it. I immediately regretted my silence up to that point and made her turn around and walk back into the bathroom and properly wash her hands while I got out the cleaning supplies. Story 44. I found out one of my best friends was a pedophile. I never confronted him, but I just told him I didn't want to be friends anymore and blocked him everywhere. I felt disgusting after finding out I was friends with a person like that, even if I didn't know he was like that. Story 45. Not close to me, but in high school, a friend of one of my friends told us that she smeared peanut butter on her labia and had her dog lick it off. She told us to try it if we had a dog. My friend told me to ignore it because her friend was a bit developmentally challenged and could do and say strange things. But I could never look at her the same way again, and whenever she was around my friend, I tried to avoid them. Story 46. When I was in high school, we found a VHS tape stuck behind the TV and a wall at our friend's house. We watched it when he was asleep. There's no words for what we saw. He filmed at crotch level himself, sitting in a leather chair, putting peanut butter all over his junk. His dog was there licking it up. He kept moaning and saying good girl to the dog. 3 of us saw that tape and never spoke a word of it to anyone but ourselves. I'm sad I have to have. This is my head forever. Story 47. So every night we'd crawl into his waterbed, my boff and I, and every night I'd wake up soaked. So I'd drag us both off the leaky mess, bing and moaning all the while, toweled it down and changed the sheets in our PGs. Eventually, finally, I caught the sob actually peeing himself and myself and was so ashamed and embarrassed, I just broke up with him because it wasn't medical. It was adult beverage related. Never talked about it. I was gobsmacked that he let me mop him up nightly, letting me think we had a leak in the bed. Disgusting indeed. Story 48. My flatmate doesn't wash his hands after going to the bathroom or handling raw meat. He doesn't wash the exterior of dishes, i.e. the behind of the plates, the exterior of bowls or mugs, pans, pots. I spend my time washing towels and pre-washing cooking utensils or dishware before I use them. Story 49. I came across my friend and her husband's channel on Pornhub. I'm not shaming intimacy work content. That's not the disgusting part. It's the fact I don't want to see them naked. I can't unsee it. However, all I will say is I understand now why she's a very happy lady. They seem popular on there, so kudos and all that. Story 50. My ex-husband wouldn't always wipe after going to. I noticed when I caught whiffs of the smell, and he would always blame the kids or pretend to have just farted. Laundry was horrific. I would find marks on the bedding. I didn't say anything, but got on a huge house-wide hygiene kick, inked the kids to try to hint at it. Story 51. An acquaintance said something really nasty about people with Down syndrome to a mutual friend. Said friend had a stepdaughter who was severely disabled with Rett syndrome. She was really upset. My bestie's first cousin has Downs, is a lovely, happy man. I just unfriended her on FB. Pretty sure she knows why. I've also had a stroke, which left me disabled for a while, so I don't take kindly to comments like hers. Story 52. That some people can be actually evil. Like I used to think that the movies were exaggerated. I grew up in a nice environment, but when I went to college, one of my friends was straight up evil. She would lie and cry and manipulate everyone if she didn't like someone. That's how we became friends. One day she came to me crying about her roommate. We all lived in the college residential building. She told me how her roommate used to torture her and shoot. She told this story to everyone in the building. Everyone started thinking that this roommate is bad and started avoiding her. Then a few months later, she jokingly said that she found it fun to socially isolate her roommate because her roommate didn't invite her to go out with her. Ew. This wasn't it. She would backbitch about all her close friends to me, but would act nice in front of them. Once she made a wish that her professor's baby would die. Her professor was pregnant because she didn't give her good marks. Like the things she would say, those thoughts would never ever come in my mind. Story 53. That my best friend stole thousands of dollars from the register during his employment and even broke into the store and stole out of the safe from his first employer while he was manic. He's my best friend and always will be, and he's a lot better now and is on the right medications. But that always stuck with me that he did that. Story 54. My husband and I had a falling out with our social group after someone said quite publicly that our child could not possibly be my husband's because she is lighter skinned. I am white, my husband is black. I had one conversation with the person I looked up to the most and was met with refusal to take responsibility. My best fudge friend allowed it to be said without defending me and sided with them when we split. Nothing has ever hurt more. I have never been unfaithful to my husband and never have given any indication that I had been. Life is lonely. Story 55. Many years ago, I found out my longtime ex-girlfriend's dad was a Yakuza mafia boss in Japan. I guess that's a bad example as there was nothing to confront her about. Her and her siblings all left Japan as teenagers and got educated in the US or Europe. They were close to their dad and respected him. I talked to him on the phone a couple of times. Very funny, eccentric guy. He spoke a little bit of English, and his thing was he liked to call his daughter and then talk to me while surrounded by his associates just to flex that he spoke English. Her upbringing seemed pretty normal to her. They lived like rich, privileged people in Japan. Craziest story she told me was that she once answered the phone at home and a man yelled at her, cursing out her dad for being on the bad end of business deal. The dude apparently didn't know who her dad was, but he found out and came over to apologize. Her dad called her to come downstairs, and the dude was on his knees crying and begging for her forgiveness for being so rude. Story 56. In college, my longtime boyfriend and I randomly, unexpectedly found his grandfather on the intimacy offender registry. He never wanted to find out why he was on it because he didn't want to change his view of him. He has since passed, and we have since broken up, but I still want to know. Story 57. Ex-friend and his dad used to sleep with the same women. Not at the same time, but would take turns sometimes on the same day. He was a small Twitch streamer with a rich dad. Not sure what the girls were thinking, but they seemed okay with the arrangement. I'm pretty open-minded and intimacy positive, but that grossed me out. I slowly phased myself out of his life. Pretty sure it's still ongoing, but I heard he was doing substances now. SMH. Story 58. I was caring for my father in his last year. One of my siblings was also helping, although not much. Dad sold some property and moved into an apartment. He wanted my sibling to take over his finances. I knew this was a disaster. I know my sibling. As soon as that happened, our money was flying out of Dad's accounts. I noticed money was draining fast whenever sibling went to the pharmacy, and they started going 2-3 times a week. On the surface, it looked like they were paying $20 a visit for medication in the account. But clicking through the transactions showed it was actually $60, $20 for food and $20 cash back. Dad didn't know about those 40 extra transactions. It was adding up to an extra $320. Almost $500 a month. All this happened over a 3-month period. By that point, Dad was in hospice and hospitalized, and I didn't see a point to rubbing salt in the wound about the betrayal. I didn't confront my sibling, but when they were continuing to use the bank card after Dad died, my spouse did. I love my sibling, and I know they love us, but when push comes to shove, they put themselves first. They drained half the money Dad had in those 3 months, so it was good he died when he did. I didn't have any more money to help. Story 59. Former close friend was constantly cheating on his fiancée. Last time he told me he had her an STD and convinced her that she actually gave him a UTI. Rather than say anything, I just stopped talking to him. This caused all the other guys to stop talking to me, and now I'm nearly 40 with no close friends. Last I heard, his fiancée was constantly talking shit about me abandoning everyone. The irony. Story 60. My wife cheated on me, gave me a steady round of antibiotics. I was right again, health-wise. I did try to confront her, though, and all she did was lower her head. I realized in that moment she was never mine or my wife. I filed for divorce. Good luck getting half my check. Story 61. That my mother basically emotionally blackmailed my dad to cut off his family, and the stories she had always told us about them were exaggerated and probably entirely untrue in some cases. We found letters from his mother after he passed and ended up doing some digging. Still at it, reaching out to long-lost relatives. It's a hard thing to make peace with, and there aren't many people alive anymore that can provide more information. I knew we were onto something when my mother freaked out over my sister being in contact with my dad's sister, who she had previously not had a problem with. She is incapable of telling the truth about her actions if she knows it will make her look bad. Story 62. During my last day of high school, I had a close friend of mine show me a loaded gun in his backpack. He told me that I was the only one he was showing it to. I got the fudge out of there because the guy did have some mental issues that made me immediately fearful. I never spoke to him again and haven't told a soul until I got older. Story 63. Found a book my mom was reading about healing when your partner has an adult content problem and online infidelity. I love my parents. They are still together. Our family is pretty unremarkable, but it's hard to forget finding out your dad has an adult content problem when you live under the same roof. Yuck! Story 64. My BAFF's partner, now ex-BFF, casually talking about torturing all kinds of animals to passing and laughing. And in hindsight, her excusing it, even though she's a vet tech. I disliked that guy, and there were many things wrong with him, but that was the first time I thought this dude is actually fudge psycho and a disgusting human being. Story 65. I had a coworker for about 4 years or so, twice my age and always hit on me, but never tried anything. I gave him rides for almost the whole time I worked there. One day, him and another coworker were arguing and yelling. They started pulling out sharp knives and talking about eliminate each other, while another guy, older than me, was crouched behind a door watching fearful. I had gone in there completely furious they were acting unprofessional at work and started ridiculing their actions. He told me he didn't care about going to prison, that he wanted to eliminate the other guy. I spat back at him. He better think hard on that BC, his teenage daughter would miss him. He claimed she'd be better off without him, and he could talk to her in jail. I told him she may not want to talk to him ever again, BC. He chose that over her, or she could follow into his footsteps. He stayed angry, but I made him go up front to the boss. The boss was like, not in my business, but he acted scared of this guy. I sent them both home. Other employee was fired as he started it, and we found out he was high on substances. And the coworker later apologized, saying I was right to mention his daughter, and that he had given his gun to his dad to keep away from him so he wouldn't go find other guy. I found out a few months after this happened that he had originally come to work at my job after being released from prison as my boss looked for any help he could find. Why had he served time? For beating, raping, and tying up a girl, and beating and stabbing her mother, leaving both for dead. Story 66. I'm 9 and sure my grandma knew her BF was raping me from the ages of 3, 10 groomed me after 10 BC. I started freaking out. Was on guard my whole childhood having to watch his every move. I was able to cut contact at 15. She died when I was 17. I honestly dislike her more than him. How could someone ever turn their head to that? Story 67. I had a childhood best friend until my family moved away. Reconnected with some of my other friends on FB years later. Found out he offed himself. Felt awful about it, but didn't travel the 3,000 miles to his funeral. Felt bad about that too. A couple years later, I was bored at work and started looking people up. Found him in his court records. He offed himself the day he was found guilty of intimacy contact with a minor under 12. Other friends left that out, didn't know. Didn't feel bad about his passing anymore. In fact, wish he did it sooner. Story 68. My sisters were in contact with our uncle who intimacy assaulted his granddaughters, our cousin's daughters. He was convicted, and after he got out of jail, he lived with his mother, our grandmother, and my sister still brought her own granddaughter to visit our grandmother because it was so important for them to have a relationship. She repeatedly brought this child into a house that a convicted child predator was living in. Story 69. When my mom's elderly dog died, escaped during a storm and drowned in the pool, my dad told my mom he was having the dog cremated, but actually took it to the dumpster behind his office and brought my mom back a bag of sand and told her it was the dog's ashes. My grandma, mom's mom, got the dog out of the dumpster and actually had it cremated. My grandma just casually dropped this piece of family trauma after my mom died 3 years ago. Story 70. My father was part of the Manson family. I don't know his level of involvement. My mom used to talk about it when I was a kid while they were still together. I don't have a good relationship with my mom, and even if I asked her about it, she probably wouldn't give me a straight answer. My dad just stopped showing up for visitation around age 10. I never had the chance to talk to him about it, and chances are, he wouldn't have answered honestly. The worst part is, my mom gave me some details about Sharon Tate's passing that has never been available to the public when I was 5. Weirdest detail to drop in a conversation to a 5-year-old. We were passing by the house where the takedown happened, and she just dropped the info casually and never mentioned it again. I've read books on the takedown, watched docs. Nothing about the details that my mom mentioned show up in any public record. I've always wondered if my mom was just talking out of her jerk, if my dad, who is very crazy in his own regard, was involved somehow and just never got connected to the takedown, or if my dad was hanging around with Manson after the takedown and heard the stories straight from the people involved. Story 71. I found out a guy I dated for about 6 months was a booger eater. Did it in front of me. And then when I asked, did you just pick your nose and eat it? He tried to deny it and said something ridiculous like, my nose was just dry. What? Then to make matters worse, he then said I haven't done that in over 20 years. Okay, so you were a booger eater until 20? Lol. This man was 40 at the time. Suffice to say, we didn't have intimacy that day or ever again. That was the last time I saw him in person. We broke up shortly thereafter. I know this response doesn't fit the prompt exactly, but I felt compelled to share. Story 72. Worked with a guy for several years before I found out that he was into very young children. I immediately stopped talking to him, and then he moved to another location within the company. A year later, he shot himself in the head. He was about 38 years old. Story 73. Found out a guy I knew had groomed a 14-year-old and emotionally and intimacy abused her. He talked about it like it was a completely normal relationship and described the horrific ways he hurt that child like they were normal, funny stories. He liked to joke brag about how big his male body part was by telling me about the multiple times he had severely injured her during intimacy because she was a little girl. Edit, he also said the relationship was mutually toxic. He was just a poor little traumatized boy, adult, trying to connect with a traumatized girl who could understand him, child. And yes, he wasn't perfect, emotionally and intimacy abusive, but she was so cold and uncaring to him, escaped him after he repeatedly violated her. He blamed her for not being understanding of his issues. He called her a 14-year-old child, emotionally immature. Story 74. Not super close to me, personally, but my sister. When my sister was in college, she took me with her to her boyfriend's family's house. The boyfriend's siblings, two of them young teens, my sister 21-ish, and me 15-ish, were in the computer room. Yeah, I know. The computer was on one of those screensavers where it cycled through photos that were saved on the device. You already know where this is going. Yes, it was adult content. What you may not be expecting is that it was bestiality, adult content. It changed from a photo of his wife and the youngest son to a photo of a very busty woman sucking a dog's red rocket. My sister said, "Okay, everybody, out," and we went home earlier than we were supposed to. I have no clue what happened after we left. Story 75. My dad is old and doesn't know how to close tabs on his phone. He wanted me to download a weather app for him, and the first thing that popped up when I opened his phone was an adult content site that specifically had videos of women my age. Just closed the tab and locked the memory away in my brain. Story 76. My own mother trained my 4-year-old daughter that no one is allowed to touch her privates, which I taught her very well myself. Even if mommy says so, what I could have done to ever prompt this, I still don't know. When I confronted her about it, she lied and said my daughter came up with that on her own. Still haven't fully confronted her on the lie. Story 77. My husband has terrible plaque psoriasis on his head and beard, causing massive skin flakes to constantly be in those areas. He's always been super self-conscious about it, but it never really bothered me too much. I've on occasion had dandruff in the past due to dry weather conditions or having a reaction to a new shampoo. Like it's totally normal to have dry skin flaking off your head at some point. YK. I knew it was something he would always beat himself up for, and so I'd reassure him that it wasn't his fault, wasn't a big deal, and didn't make him unattractive. It wasn't until I caught him eating the flakes that I became extremely disgusted. He must have hid this foul habit for quite a while, but now I catch him doing it literally all the time. Digging his scalp, looking down at the chunk of dead skin in his hand, pinching it between his fingers to hide it until he thinks I'm not paying attention, and then shoving it in his mouth and gnawing on it. Sometimes he will dig and collect a few of them between his fingers, then eat them all at once. I honestly would find it less disgusting if he picked his boogers and ate them. It truly takes everything I have not to audibly gag whenever I catch him doing this. There have been several times that I unintentionally make a visibly disgusted face that he sees, to which he replies, "What?" as if he thinks I didn't just see what he did. Every once in a while, he will be inspecting my scalp, and if he finds a small flake of dry skin, he'll pull it out of my hair, show it to me, and say, "That's a keeper," which I think is a movie quote reference to one of the Austin Powers movies, if I'm not mistaken. It makes me absolutely sick to my stomach, and I can tell he's just dying to stick it in his mouth and chew on it, but I won't break eye contact and give him the chance. I have come really close to confronting him about this before, but I've never flat out called him out on it. TLDR. My husband eats the dry flakes of plaque psoriasis that he picks out of his hair and beard. Story 78. Bad enough to where he won't even type it out. Just be careful who you invite into your life is all I can say. Don't jump in unless you trust someone in your guts. If you have any doubt, there's probably a reason you just can't process. That's your brain trying to protect you, lol. Answer. Words to live by. I have never regretted trusting my gut. On the other hand, there have been times I wish I would have listened to what my instincts told me. Your initial reading of other people lacks the ingrained politeness that tells you to write off unease. When someone creeps you out or comes across as generally off-putting, consider that there might be a good reason for it, even if you can't explain it yet. Story 79. Best friends with the owner of the company I work for 10 years. Told him I really liked a new hire at work, and he encouraged me to ask her out. I did so. Entire time he was courting her and never told me. She chose him, which is fine, no bother. She is the youngest member of the company, early 20s, and there is a 15-year age gap between them. Story 80. Edit. I never fudge meant for you to find out like this, holy fudge shoot. I want to be angry at you for stalking my Reddit account because what the fudge. But at the same time, this really sucks for you if you didn't know already. Please, I'm already the outcast of the family as it is. Don't tell them how you found out. Not even my friends know my Reddit account. You went snooping. I'm sorry. My husband's family live in a tiny redneck town and are deeply religious. His mom got pregnant at like 16. His mom had a twin sister who had one daughter. That daughter also got pregnant really young. Then she left that man to be with another, all out of wedlock. I don't care about that, but the irony. The second man she was with was really abusive. He had a lot of psychological problems and is now institutionalized. She got pregnant, but left and went back to her first baby daddy. She let everyone believe that second baby was also the first man's child. Fast forward to their teen years, daughter 2 is struggling really hard. She had a lot of issues and is eventually diagnosed with schizophrenia. She feels like a failure, especially compared to her Gold Star sister. Shortly after this was when I found out who her real father was. And when I found out, I was told she doesn't know. This poor girl is suffering, and I couldn't help but think that if she knew why she was struggling so hard, it would help. It was in her DNA. There was nothing actually wrong with her, but her mom wanted to keep her secret. I backed way off from the family after that. I do not know if she knows yet or not, and I can't be the one to tell her. She had her own child now. It eats at me sometimes. She's doing a lot better, but still, fudge the entire family for that. Story 81. UK here. When I temporarily moved back in with my parents during uni until I could find another place to live, the first full day back home involved a visit from the police with a search warrant to seize all electronic devices in the house. Apparently, they had strong evidence of indecent material entering the broadband. So they bagged up laptops and phones from myself, my younger brother, and my father. Absolutely bricking it. I don't access CP or indecent material beyond legal prawn, so I knew I was okay, but dreading anything coming back about the others. A year passes and the police tech and online detective depth are still holding our devices. Apparently they haven't looked at them yet as they are busy with more serious crimes. I had study work on there, and a year is a long time to lose all your data. A few months later, and I'm told first that my devices are clear and can be collected. Finally. Then my father received the same all clear, thankfully. However, my brother still hasn't heard anything yet. Another couple of months and my brother has to go to court. He now has a girlfriend and a baby as well. He tells us it was only thumbnails of extreme prawn and no CP whatsoever. Basically, he gets off with a warning and community service. It's never spoken about apart from very light talk about the dangers of the internet putting illegal stuff on your cash. My mother and father are convinced and believe him, but I'm kind of wondering if he really did try accessing stuff he shouldn't have and only got off because he was a new father and is stepfathering his Jeff's son. If I had returned home a day later or even left my laptop at uni, I would have avoided this whole situation. Story 82. My former best friend openly supported October 7th and Hamas and believed ethnic cleansing of Jews is justified. I suppose it is to be expected. We are Arabic, and from childhood we are taught that Jews are devil and all kinds of craps. I just cut all contact with him. Story 83. My former friend got divorced from his wife, whom he had just had a child less than a year old with, mind you. Reason was because they kept fighting to the point where it escalated into physical violence. Well, he had to move out, and he had a large dog that he couldn't move into the new apartment he got. He made a Facebook post about it, then a few weeks later took it down. Then he made a post saying he got his dog adopted out. Well, just this summer, I found out from a close friend who also know this guy that he actually took his dog out to the bushes in the countryside and shot the dog dead and buried it there. I messaged his cousin, who then called me on their cell phone to tell me that is true, but I cannot tell anyone or post about it online. I just deleted the guy rather than get wrapped up in drama. Realized that his friendly and outgoing persona was a lie. He was abusive towards his ex-wife and eliminated his dog and hid it from everyone. Last time I checked, he is now in a relationship with a new woman, and his ex-wife, who is friends with my fiancé, posts that he doesn't want custody of their kid, so she is taking him to court for child support. Guy seems like a genuine sociopath who wears a mask. Story 84. My mom sat me down and told me I needed to never be alone with a certain person due to that person having intimacy abused a female family member. My brother, a toddler at the time, spent immense amounts of time with this person. I don't know if they were ever fully alone, though. I don't know why my brother was allowed to keep going to the person's house. He was there almost every day. I always worried if he was safe, and I think my mom thought because he is a boy, he would be safe. Not necessarily true. I still don't know if anything ever happened to him. I don't even know if he knows what the person did at all. I had always had a very weird vibe about that person. Also, a family member was carrying me in their arms. I was probably about 3 when they were assaulting their spouse. I saw the whole thing close up. I've never told them I remember. There are so many more incidents, people. These are just the first that came to mind. On average, I'd say every family has at least 2 to 3 pieces of shoot, abusers, etc. Story 85. My wife's grandmother, Nancy, carried twins to full term. The birth was difficult, and unfortunately, they were stillborn. It was a devastating loss, and then her husband, the father of the babies, turned up at the hospital with his new girlfriend to announce he was leaving Nancy. Story 86. My friend's husband dressed up in blackface as a beaten-up Rodney King, and she as a cop at a Halloween party. The picture was posted on their friend's social media page. They were tagged in it, and they were laughing in the pictures. I quietly ghosted her on every social media platform and have no intention of ever speaking to her again. Story 87. Not exactly found out, but some other family members abuse their pets via negligence, and almost all of the pets end up nasty. I have tried stepping in a few times, but been stopped because my parents think keeping peace between neighbors and family is more important than an animal's life. Story 88. When I was in middle school, I was sad by a high school senior who then went on to marry one of my cousins. My whole family is full of abusive, toxic, repulsive people, so confrontation would have just gotten me ousted anyway. Am no contact and have been for years now. Story 89. The man who violated me multiple times during our relationship violated at least two other people while we were dating. One was getting a woman blackout and following her home. The other was just turned 17 to his 27. He regularly called her his kid sister. Story 90. My mom caught my dad cheating on her one time, and my mom was willing to forgive him as long as he would never do it again. I learned that although he was an amazing dad, he wasn't the best husband. And honestly, I still spend time with him. He's my dad after all. That doesn't mean what he did all the time ago is okay, but I'm not going to stress about something that happened before I was even born. Anyway, they've been divorced for a while now, and I still visit him every week or so to hang out. But please, whatever you do, don't dislike on my dad because of what I said. He may have messed up, but I'm still his daughter, and I still love him. Story 91. Here, a long list. My mother, back when she was 16 or 17, she was having an affair with a 24-year-old married man who she babysat his kids. Then at 17, she got pregnant by some random guy in high school and had my older brother. He was supposed to be born on her birthday, but she forced the doctor to induce her a day early because she did not want to share a birthday with him. Then she threw a fit for getting baby stuff for her birthday. And listen, it gets so much worse. Her dad passed in 2002. When he passed, she went to where he was born, and she slept with her first cousin and got pregnant with my dead inbred older half-sibling, who she aborted. She was in the Army. She was the bunk rack bunny. And when she was 24, she slept with a 16 or 17-year-old pizza boy. Then she met my dad and baby trapped him with me. They got married within a year and had me. They had 5 kids together, me and my 4 younger brothers. And now they are divorced because my mom went crazy. We all think it's because my dad got bladder cancer and had his bladder and prostate taken out. And she's a freaking nurse. Then she took a good portion of their saving account they shared and went to France to meet this guy she met on an online game, the Walking Dead phone game. He ended up being married and she still messed around with him while she was there. So she cheated. They have been divorced for over a year. And ever since then, she's been jumping from guy to guy. She's now with the 6th guy right now. And on the 2nd date, she spent the night with him. She's been sleeping with all of the guys also. So yeah, my mom has been around a lot. Answer. OMG, your mom's wild, Af. And I thought my dad was bad enough. He cheated on my mom with 2 women, although I wouldn't be surprised if he had more mistresses. As a child, he introduced my siblings and I to one, and then the other one after my parents separated, which is his GF. My dad's got bladder cancer as well. Now, I'm not saying he deserved it, but he got his karma. I feel sorry for your family and dad especially. Sounds like he's been through hell. Story 92. Mucus is the most disgusting thing to me, and my ex-bot from high school was just so mucusy. She said that she had so much mucus that every month she just vomited up. She was constantly hawking loogies. If she hawked one while laying in bed, she'd wipe it on the side of her sheets. I was there when her dad somehow discovered her loogie-covered sheets. That's nasty, like really nasty. Okay, Dad, I never mentioned it to her or how gross the sheets thing was, but I probably should have urged her to see a doctor or something. Maybe it was acid reflux, IDK. Story 93. That my dad, a high school football star, and his friends picked up at least one hitchhiker in Leesburg, FL, in the late 1960s and beat the SHE out of him for fun. His pastime of beating harmless people was known to be true by my mom, my brother, and me, yet I still feel like a garbage human being for not spending time with him in his twilight years. Story 94. Not close to me, but back in the day I was working at a nice house and the homeowner asked if I wanted his old Mac computer, the plastic-handled ones where you needed a monitor as well, which was still modern back then. Later turned it on expecting a wiped hard drive, and it was, of course, except it sorta wasn't. There were about 30 low-resolution thumbnails spread out among some obscure folders that the wipe created. I was digging around out of curiosity. These thumbnails would have ended his marriage without a doubt, all taken in their master bedroom with other women. So what? Well, this guy was known locally for his high morals, strong faith, etc. Sledgehammered the HD, my typical end-of-life technique, and disposed of both. Story 95. In college, I had been dating who I now know is a diagnosed psychopath. I had introduced him to my cousin and her boyfriend at a family dinner, as that cousin had moved up to my area and was living in the dorms. I also separately gave her a spare key to my place, as it was a full home, in case she got tired of having a microwave and mini fridge only. After we broke up, he had left something at my house and I offered it to him. 3-4 years later, me, my cousin, and her still boyfriend are tipsy, and he accidentally told me about the time they went with my ex to my home when I wasn't there to help him get what he'd left. Still boyfriend was keeping watch outside the whole time they rifled through my stuff. In positive, she knows that I know, because it's been around 6 years since I found out, and she's avoided me ever since. Pathetic. Story 96. When I was in high school, I had a classmate who didn't have a phone, would ask to use mine regularly. We became close friends. I had a boyfriend at the time and would send him private pictures, and then I would delete them, but they stayed and recently deleted. Well, one day that classmate forgot to log out of Instagram, and the notifications popped up of him talking to one of my other classmates, accusing me of sending him private pictures and just talking shoot about how nasty I was for that ECT. I was appalled. I never did those things. I told my BF about it, and I threatened to tell the police if he didn't clear up that lie, and also I felt so violated. Turns out he had sent my picture from my phone to a friend's number, deleted the thread, gave my phone back to me, and then proceeded to use his phone to communicate with other people about my pictures. Also turns out he liked me. What a douchebag. Story 97. I found out one of my male friends intimacy assaulted a female friend when she was tipsy sleeping. She woke up as it was happening and confronted him. I haven't spoken to him since. It's been over 20 years. I'm still furious with him and genuinely don't know what I'd do if I saw him face to face. So I've avoided him deliberately. Story 98. I don't know this for a fact, but my parents strongly suspect one of our childhood neighbors was a pedophile and may have molested his own daughter. My mom was friends, and one time she confided in my mom that she found something disturbing on her husband's computer. My mom assumed it was just some regular old kinky adult content and told her it probably wasn't a big deal. But the wife kept insisting it was worse than that, although she never gave enough details to confirm whether it involved children or not. The couple also had 2 daughters, and the younger one was always a little off. One time, when she was like 6 or 7 years old, she got kicked off the bus for repeatedly pulling down a male classmate's pants. And according to my dad, there were multiple occasions where she acted weirdly flirtatious with him and the other men at our neighborhood get-togethers, again when she was prepubescent. Obviously, I never confronted him. 1, because I didn't know about all of this until years later. 2, we didn't have any real proof it was happening. And 3, I was a kid myself at the time it would have been happening. Story 99. Sadly only found out after he died, but my grandfather violated my mother, his daughter, when she was a kid. Grandmother knew about it, but just kept silent. She was